Without this ability to compare like objects, humanity surely wouldn't have survived. However, the ego has co-opted this ability and is using it for its own purposes, the creation of negative feelings, which is necessary for the false self's survival. The egoic mind accomplishes this through the voice in our head by comparing things that are not comparable, such as comparing yourself at age 18 to yourself at age 60, or by comparing someone or something to an imaginary ideal, such as comparing yourself to Wonder Woman or Superman, or to some other imagination of yourself that does not and will never exist. If you pay attention to the voice in your head's comparisons, you will see that they are neither useful nor appropriate. They are nothing like comparing an apple to other similar apples. The most common comparison is comparing how we look to how someone else looks. This type of comparison happens instantly, automatically, and often beyond our awareness whenever we first meet or encounter someone. Through this type of comparison, the ego defines and continually redefines the false self. How do I measure up is the ongoing question embedded in the egoic programming, and the easiest and most obvious measure is appearance, especially in cultures where appearances are emphasized. When viewed rationally, such physical assessments don't mean much. They may have been relevant and useful when physical prowess meant survival, but such assessments have value only to the ego these days. The ego has its measures by which it assesses and judges others, and these assessments and judgments are arbitrary and rather useless, and yet the ego holds them as if they were of utmost importance. And because the media bolsters the ego's perceptions and values, they seem true and of almost life and death importance socially, so much so that it seems an impossible task to love ourselves if how we look doesn't conform to a certain standard of beauty. This mindset is like a virus that has shaped how we see and behave towards each other. This wouldn't be much of an issue if we had other ways of assessing each other besides physical appearances when we meet, but we don't display our resumes or character as we do our hair color. This emphasis on physical appearance causes us to overlook so many other things about others that are of real value to survival, fulfillment, and happiness. How is this undone socially and personally? In some respects, that is what this book is about, as for most, aging feels like a battle over losing our looks and therefore our seeming value in the eyes of others. When appearances, youth, and a certain standard of beauty are overly valued, then those aging and the elderly become undervalued, whether that is acknowledged or not. Within society, respect for our elders is still held as a value, but for most who are more youthful, this is more of an ideal or belief than an actual experience of respect. Those who are young feel respect for beauty, strength, and other attributes of the young, and are often unaware of the deep resources hidden within those who have lived much longer. It can be difficult to see beyond appearances to the being that is cloaked in an aged body. Again, how is this changed? It is unlikely that you alone can change society, as none of us is powerful enough to control the media and other people's thinking, but you do have the power to change how you see things. Primarily, this transformation comes about by changing our relationship to the voice in our head. We stop believing its assessments and instead see them for what they are: ignorant and useless. Ranking is one of the ego's favorite activities. The ego is always trying to figure out where it stands in relation to others, and this can change day to day or even hour to hour. These assessments are expressed as stories. 1 minute you're the greatest, and the next minute you're a loser. Our stories about ourselves never stay the same. We are never on top for long before the voice in our head finds us lacking in comparison to someone else. Up and down we go. This endless comparison with others is one of the ways the ego keeps the roller coaster of feelings going. We have our good days and our bad days, often simply owing to how the voice in our head is defining us, what story du jour it has made up. Or we make a mistake, and then the story changes from a good one to a bad one. It doesn't take much for the ego to find us lacking. Comparisons are a recipe for anger, disappointment, and other feelings the ego loves to generate. Comparisons lead only to negative feelings and nothing constructive when we are comparing ourselves or others or to some ideal. This is one of the main occupations of the voice in our head, and these comparisons are useless, a waste of our precious focus and energy. Like so much that goes on in the egoic mind, comparisons are a lie, which is why they are so painful to everyone involved. The ego's comparisons can't possibly be true because they attempt to compare two individuals who are unique, which by definition means only one of its kind. You and everyone else are meant to be one of a kind. You are meant to be just as you are. No different. Seeing this is the antidote to so much of the ego's detrimental programming, not only about our appearance, but also about the changes that naturally occur as we age. You are one of a kind and meant to be just as you are. Comparing ourselves to others and comparing others to others is painful for everyone involved because comparisons take us down the ego's rabbit hole. Comparisons take us into the illusory world of the ego, where the ego tells us what to believe and how to be, and all of this causes us to suffer. The voice in our head creates a world of illusion where we are never good enough, others are never good enough, and life is never good enough. And it does this largely through comparisons. Comparing ourselves with others is bad enough, but there is one other type of comparison that causes us a great deal of suffering as we age: comparing ourselves with our younger self. When we do this, we see all the ways that our body is not as beautiful, young, or strong as it used to be. We focus on what we've lost over time, not on what we've gained. The ego values beauty, youth, and strength more than it values what we have gained as we've aged: the wisdom, the depth of experience, the compassion, and the spiritual understanding. What does the ego care about these? The ego sees but one side of the story, not the whole truth, and so we suffer. Comparing our younger body and appearance with our current body and appearance is a recipe for suffering, but this is what we so often do, instantly and unconsciously, especially when we look in the mirror. The ego sees the older image and is disappointed, as if it could be any other way. The ego doesn't accept reality, and so we suffer. But once we accept this simple truth about reality, every flower fades, we can relax and enjoy the ride. No problem here.